Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Mr. Pad Paramahamsa Padavadikacharya Ashtottara Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Padavadikacharya Ashtottara Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, 698. Now I thought I remembered where your father ended. Is he here? Where is he? In the back? All right. I thought he ended with the desert description, which was on, let's see, this is text 8. Okay. Yeah. So I guess we'll assume that's okay. Does anyone remember? You read a bunch of...
I think that it was mentioning that Indra distributed that all that sin among that desert and...
Oh, he read through that. Okay. Well, that's far. That's a long ways off. Well, we'll chant this one, and I'll just read the translations. Okay. Sorry about the confusion. Hare Krishna. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 27th day of March, 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in Canto 6, Prescribed Duties for Mankind, Chapter 9, The Appearance of the Demon Vritrasura. And we're on text, we're going to be changing text number 8. But before we do, I better say my prayers. Narayanam namaskritya Narang chaiva narottamam Devim saraswatim vyasam Tato jayamudirayed. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashtaprayasha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an inevitable fact. Okay, so we have number 8. Okay. Turyam Cheda Virohena Varena Jagrahur Dhrumaha Tesham Niryasa Rupena Brahmahatya Pradrishyate. Tuyam Cheda Virohena Varena Jagrahur Dhrumaha Teshang niryasa rupena Brahmahatya padrishyate. Tuyam cheda virohena Varena jaguhur dhumaha Teshang niryasa rupena Brahmahatya padrishyate. Tuyam cheda virohena Varena jaguhur dhumaha Teshang niryasa rupena Brahmahatya padrishyate. Tuyam cheda virohena Varena jaguhur dhumaha Tesham niryasa rupena Brahmahatya padrishyate. Tuyam cheda virohena Varena jaguhur dhumaha Tesham niryasa rupena Brahmahatya padrishyate. Tuyam cheda virohena Varena jaguhur dhumaha Teshang niryasa rupena Brahmahatya padrishyate. Mukunda. Tuyam cheda virohena Varena jaguhur dhumaha Teshang niryasa rupena Brahmahatya padrishyate. One of you. Tuyam cheda virohena Varena jaguhur dhumaha Teshang niryaso rupena brahmahatya pradrishyate Tuyang cheda virohena Varena jagurudhumaha Teshang niryaso rupena brahmahatya pradrishyate Turyam, 1/4. Cheda, although being cut. Virohena, of growing again. Varena, because of the benediction. Jagruhu, accepted. Dhumaha, the trees. Tesham, of them. Niryasarupena, by the liquid oozing from the trees. Brahmahatya, the reaction for killing a brahmana. Pradrishyate is visible. Translation: in return for Indra's benediction that their branches and twigs would grow back when trimmed, the trees accepted 1/4 of the reactions for killing a Brahman. These reactions are visible in the flowing of sap from trees. And then in brackets, Prabhupada says, therefore one is forbidden to drink this sap. So we're going to go on. And when we come to the, if you recognize the verse we ended on. Okay, I'll just read the translation. Text 9. In return for Lord Indra's benediction that they would be able to enjoy lusty desires continuously, even during pregnancy, for as long as sex is not injurious to the embryo, women accepted 1/4 of the sinful reactions. As a result of those reactions, women manifest the signs of menstruation every month. Purport. Women as a class are very lusty, and apparently their continuous lusty desires are never satisfied. In return for Lord Indra's benediction that there would be no cessation to their lusty desires, women accepted 1/4 of the sinful reactions for killing a Brahman. And in return for King Indra's benediction that water would increase the volume of other substances with which it was mixed, water accepted 1/4 of the sinful reactions. Therefore there are bubbles and foam in water. When one collects water, these should be avoided. Purport. If water is mixed with milk, fruit juice, or other similar substances, it increases their volume, and no one can understand which has increased. In return for this benediction, water accepted 1/4 of Indra's sinful reactions. These sinful reactions are visible in foam and bubbles. Therefore, one should avoid foam and bubbles when collecting drinking water. After Vishwarup was killed, his father, Tvashta, performed ritualistic ceremonies to kill Indra. He offered oblations in the sacrificial fire, saying, O enemy of Indra, flourish to kill your enemy without delay. Purport. There was some defect in Tvashta's chanting of the mantra because he chanted it long instead of short, and therefore the meaning changed. Tvashta intended to chant the word Indra Shatro, meaning O enemy of Indra. In this mantra, the word Indra is in the possessive case, Shashti, and the word Indra Shatro is called a Tatpurusha compound, Tatpurusha Samas. Unfortunately, instead of chanting the mantra short, Tvashta chanted it long, and its meaning changed from the enemy of Indra to Indra who is an enemy. Consequently, instead of an enemy of Indra's, there emerged the body of Vritrasa, of whom Indra was the enemy. Did we read beyond that? I'll just keep going. Thereafter, from the southern side of the sacrificial fire known as Anvaharya, came a fearful personality who looked like the destroyer of the entire creation at the end of the millennium. Wow, here's the next description. Whoa, long description. Like arrows released in the 4 directions, the demon's body grew day after day. Tall and blackish, he appeared like a burnt hill and was as lustrous as a bright array of clouds in the evening. The hair on the demon's body and his beard and mustache were the color of melted copper, and his eyes were piercing like the midday sun. He appeared unconquerable, as if holding the 3 worlds on the points of his blazing trident. Dancing and shouting with a loud voice, he made the entire surface of the earth tremble as if from an earthquake. As he yawned again and again, he seemed to be trying to swallow the whole sky with his mouth. which was as deep as a cave. He seemed to be licking up all the stars in the sky with his tongue and eating the entire universe with his long, sharp teeth. Seeing this gigantic demon, everyone in great fear ran here and there in all directions. No purport. That very fearful demon, who was actually the son of Twashta, covered all the planetary systems by dint of austerity. Therefore he was named Vritra, or one who covers everything. Purport. In the Vedas it is said, Sahima lokan avanotad vritratvam. Because the demon covered all the planetary systems, his name was Vritrasura. Alright, let's read a few more. The demigods, headed by Indra, charged the demon with their soldiers, striking him with their own transcendental bows and arrows and other weapons. But Vritrasura swallowed all their weapons. Struck with wonder and disappointment upon seeing the strength of the demon, the demigods lost their own strength. Therefore they all met together to try to please the Supersoul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, by worshipping him. The demigods said, the three worlds are created by the five elements, namely earth, air, fire, water, and earth, which are controlled by various demigods, beginning with Lord Brahma. Being very much afraid that the time factor will end our existence, we offer our presentations unto time by performing our work as time dictates. The time factor himself, however, is afraid of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, let us now worship that Supreme Lord, who alone can give us full protection. Purport. When one is afraid of being killed, one must take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is worshipped by all the demigods, beginning from Brahma, although they are in charge of the various elements of this material world. The words Bibeti Yasmat indicate that all the demons, regardless of how great and powerful, fear the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The demigods, being afraid of death, took shelter of the Lord and offered him these prayers. Although the time factor is fearful to everyone, fear personified is afraid of the Supreme Lord, who is therefore known as abhaya, fearless. Taking shelter of the Supreme Lord brings actual fearlessness, and therefore the demigod decided to take shelter of the Lord. Now the occurrence of this word abhaya seems to call to mind that song, right? But is this? Did you read this yesterday? You didn't read this about abhaya. This. Okay. All right. So we'll end there then. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. Therefore, I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, this is quite a hair-raising passage. The appearance of Vritrasura. And I'm not sure, we didn't hear already how this is Chitraketu is manifest, and we know that, but I think that comes a little later, how it explains that he's Chitraketu, reborn. So this is all part of this whole pastime, and to me it illustrates one of the main lessons of this pastime, as I've expressed before, is how when you may be chanting mantras, you may be worshipping Narayan, Lord, but if it's all materially motivated, then you're not sure exactly what the outcome is going to be. It's not going to be pure devotion. And you may not get what you're looking for. They were looking for conquering the demons, and therefore they prayed to Lord Brahma, and he gave them the solution that they by accepting Vishwarup as their spiritual master, or as their priest, who could chant mantras for them, and he taught them the Narayan Kavacha. But then the material energy overwhelmed again. The mode of passion, the mode of ignorance took over Indra, and he forgot about that warning, that caveat that Brahma had told him, that you can accept him, but only if you can tolerate his, leaning toward the demon sometimes. Indra didn't follow that injunction, and he flew off the handle. And you remember what he did to Twashta, Mukunda? What did he do to Twashta, the spiritual master? Indra. You remember? How did he kill him? What is that? Not what he used, but how did he do it? What was the result? How did he die? How did Tvashta die? Tvashta was the. I'm sorry. Vishwarup. Vishwarup. I'm confused.
How did Vishwarup die? How did Indra kill him?
Okay, you remember? No. He killed him. He cut off his heads. He had 3 heads. He cut his heads and they turned into different varieties of partridges. We can research that, what that looked like. So that was a horrific end. After all these wonderful words, remember Vishwarup praised them and he was very thankful. I'm your younger, I'm younger than you, but I can accept this assignment. I'll surrender and do what you do. So he was doing, but he had this loyalty to the demons because on his mother's side, apparently. So he was offering, but he was trying to do it in secret. Anyway, it didn't work out. And so the result of that was that Indra was fraught with sinful reactions. And he was able to offload the sinful reactions to the trees and to the women and others. So, but then they still, now they have to face Vritrasura, because Tvashta is so mad, the father, naturally, he's the one who encouraged his son to take the post, and now he's gone. So he was in great anger, and he invoked this demon. But it doesn't say explicitly, but I think because of his anger, and his emotion, he made a mistake. One little mistake in the chanting. The Indra Shatro was chanted long somehow. It's not exactly explicit, but you know how Sanskrit can be tricky. Maybe some of you hadn't heard my joke about Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha. Everyone's Mukunda. This is you because you're a Sanskrit scholar, so you can understand. So you know how we chant Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha, the prayer to the devotees, right? So it's very important to get it Vancha, not Vancha, because Vanchaka means to cheat. Vancha means desires. So if you say Vanchaka Alpa means small. So you combine a Vanchakalpa the Rubhyascha. You're not offering your obeisances to the assembled devotees who are like desire trees, but you're offering your obeisances to devotees who are like small cheating trees. So make sure you say Vancha, okay? You can check him next time. So Sanskrit is like that. Seriously, Prabhupada, he explained this on a tape. When I think it's in a lecture on Bhagavad Gita 2.7, I think it is, where Arjuna surrenders, Karpan nidosho pahata svabhava prachamitam. And then he says, Shishyasteham. So Prabhupada focuses on this word Shishya. And he says the root is shas, which means to be controlled. So that's also the root of the word Shastra. One should agree and voluntarily agree to be controlled and guided by Shastra. If not, you'll be controlled by Shastra, the weapons of Durga. She has all these weapons, right? And then there's the Shishya, the same root. He agrees to be controlled by the Guru. So Sanskrit is a very versatile and wonderful language. So Tvashta was so angry, he wasn't his usually precise self, because any Brahmin, senior Brahmin like that, knows the importance of correct pronunciation. I don't know if it registered on him at the time, and maybe not, But anyway, so what is the significance? Instead of getting a creation of someone who's an enemy of Indra and will kill Indra, he invoked Vritra, who certainly looked like a formidable enemy, and Indra was going to kill Indra. But actually, Indra saw him as an enemy. And he provoked him, and he challenged, the whole battle took place. And Vritrasura, he was hoping to get killed by Indra. It comes out that because he wanted to leave that body behind and go back to Godhead, because Chitraketu's inside. He's actually Chitraketu. So Indra ended up killing him, and then again he says, "Oh my God, I killed another Brahmin," because it mentions right here he was the son of Trashta. So he's also a Brahmin, Vritrasura. And then there's more sinful reaction. This time he can't offload them. And they're personified as some tubercular old lady chasing after him, right? And he hides in a lake somewhere, and he breathes through the straw for like 100,000 years or something. So the whole thing is, you know, it's transcendental, because in the Bhagavatam is the lesson. But I think part of the important lesson here is that if you worship the Lord, because they're going to go to Krishna now. You know, what do we do now? You know, Brahma helped us before, and we were able to get Vishwarup. Now what do we do? So it's okay, go to Didichi. Dadyancha is his other name. I think that's his primary name. Didichi is like a nickname or something. And beg him for his bones. Because from those bones, which are empowered by me, with Krishna speaking, and he's so austere, you know, he's advanced, that you'll be able to fashion an invincible thunderbolt, which is Indra's main weapon. And that's what he eventually uses to kill Vritrasura. So, but what a ghastly, you know, piece of advice, you know. I mean, we get advice from Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita: surrender to me, you know, worship me, and you'll certainly come to me. And so much in the Bhagavatam, deity worship and everything. It's all very wholesome and very enlivening and uplifting. But, you know, what is it? And by the way, you should go beg someone's body so you can, you know, use their bones to make a weapon. That's not bhakti. You know, what kind of bhakti is that? You know? So, but Didichi was so advanced, first he joked with them and said, I can't give you my... And then he said, you know... And he was completely detached. He was completely, you know, meditating on Krishna. But the result was that yes, they killed Vritrasura, but oh my God, there's another Brahmin I just killed. So it's just totally entangling. And it's all because the root of the whole thing is in Indra's intoxication with his wealth and his honor and all the things. That's what started it, right? So that's part of the big lesson here. Now this thing about fearlessness, this is a big part of what Bhakti is all about. Not that that's our total motive, is that we want to become fearless in this world, but that's one of the benefits of being transcendental. That's Bhajahure Manashinandanandana. In other words, you're instructing his mind to worship Krishna's lotus feet, because that's the abode of fearlessness. And what does that mean? This is the first installment of a motivation to practice yoga, to practice bhakti yoga, any yoga. And that is that birth, old age, disease, and death. And everything that comes in between those, right? While you're alive, there's all of these threefold miseries that are you know, bothering you, that are threatening you at any time. You know, we're sitting here on San Andreas Fault. I remember when I first came here, because I came from Miami, and Miami was always like, okay, it's hurricane season. Keep your eyes on that weather report, you know. Because now when they come, they're even stronger, because the ocean is warmer. That's where it gets all its energy, global warming. I remember when I joined, it was July, and then I think it was that season, this was '89, big hurricane was heading toward Miami. And I called up the president there, Dharma. He's been there forever. I don't know, now he's not the president, but he's still there. And I said, Dharma, what are you guys doing? Are you gonna, you know, this heading straight for you? Well, you know, we're praying, we're chanting Hare Krishna. Oh, yeah, okay, great. So what happened was that it was going, but it diverted at the last minute and went south of them, and it completely wrecked I forget the name of it. It was an Air Force base there. And it completely wrecked it, and it hasn't opened since. But they got a little bit of damage, and they were able to get some money from the government, apparently. And they were able to. It was a net plus for them, that hurricane. But anyway, so but there you have warning. You know, you can back up if you can go. But like these tornadoes and things, there's hardly any warning now. You know, and certainly for earthquakes, no warning. Right? I mean, you never know, any minute, right? So that's a danger, but you tend to forget about it, you know. But it's a big adi daivik misery. It's just one of the main ones, you know. We can see in Turkey, and now, you know, when they happen, it's like really horrible. So that's part of what it means to live in the material world. These threefold miseries. Certainly, sometimes, as I like to point out, they seem to overlap, because you have these storms coming, right? In California, you have these constant. Every year, it's even worse. The forest fires, and they go on and on and on. And one of the main effects of that is air pollution. People can't, the smoke is so powerful, and it goes far to the east. Luckily, we're down here. We haven't had that. Although we did have it one year. I'll tell you, this was, I don't know what, early 2000s, because I was able to go to Vrindavan every year that we had a BBT meeting. And I'm looking over the shoulder of one guy's reading the Delhi newspaper, and on the front page of the Delhi newspaper is about the fires in San Diego, California. I swear to God. Oh, really? That's bad. Somehow I got hold of my roommate who was there. Said, yes, it was bad, but it was east of us. And there was some smoke, there was quite a bit of smoke, but it wasn't too bad. So when I get back here, there was a lot of smoke. And he left the windows open. All of it was soot, was covering the inside of our apartment. I had to do a big cleaning. That was a big deal. But one of our members, our life members, who was a major donor, he was miraculously saved. He was very wealthy. His name was Dr. Majumdar. You may have heard of him. And a multimillionaire. And he would come and give donations, and it was very nice. So he was in his home there, and he saw outside there was a glow, and he knew about the fire, but he thought it was far distant. He was playing some tapes of Prabhupada, and then he stopped it and he went to sleep. He was awakened by the kirtan. Somehow or other, the tape recorder started again. Isn't that right? We don't know how. Do you remember that? I don't know if you were here at the time. And so he woke up, and then he heard the crackling of the fire. It was right near his house, and it was about to consume the house. And so he grabbed the deities, and he ran out, and other essentials, and he ran into the car, and he was able to escape. His house was completely wrecked, and he was able to get in another house. But he was saved by some miraculous restarting of that kirtan. So anyway, things happen. So this is what material life is all about. There's an undertow of fear and anxiety, just because you don't know what's going to happen. Now sense gratification tends to suppress that. Happy-go-lucky, we can enjoy like anything. That's what part of Maya is. She convinces you, you're good. There's no danger. We're all right. And then all of a sudden, there's some great danger that happens. So, where does this fear come from? This is one of my favorite verses. Bhayam, dvidiya beneveshitak sad isha dapeta siviparhiyo asmriti. Tanmayato. So tanmayato, by Maya's influence, but how we invite Maya. Isha petasya, in the second line, turning away from the Isha. We're turning our back. In other words, we're becoming enthralled by the dualities of the material world. Dvitiya beneveshitak. Bhayam dvitiya beneveshyat comes into being when we turn away from Krishna, and we are absorbed in Maya, in the dualities of this world, trying to enjoy and so forth. Viparyo smriti, everything becomes backwards. Instead of becoming do you need to do something else? Okay. So instead of becoming a servant of Krishna, you become a servant of Maya, and the result is suffering, birth, old age, disease, and death. So this is the origin of fear. And what is Vaikuntha? You know what Vaikuntha means? The place where there is no fear or anxiety, right? That's it, no anxiety, Vaikuntha. Why? Because there's no birth, old age, disease, and death. There's no threefold miseries. Krishna is in complete control, either as Vishnu or in Goloka Vrindavan, which is also Vaikuntha planet. It's the highest Vaikuntha planet. And everything is completely in control by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who loves you, who you are in this pact of love. So He's not going to let anything bad happen, right? And on the material world, He's always there to save you from Indra, throwing the demons or whatever happens. So that's the foundation of fearlessness, and that's what it says in this verse. It said, Tanmayato. All of this is due to the influence of Maya, because we invite Maya to do that by turning away from Krishna, right? Unless we're under Krishna's protection by surrender, then Maya's got us by the three gunas. Daivi yesha gunamayi, mama maya dorotteya, mamave papadyante, maya me tangtarantite. So, Tanmayato is that Buddha abhajatam. One who is intelligent turns back toward that Isha and starts worshiping him. But how? Bhakti aikayesham, with one pointed pure devotion, not materially motivated. We're not, I mean, that's can be an auspicious first step. Chaturvanhabhajante mam jana sukhatarojana. Arto jigyasarartati gyani chabadatarshava. There's 4 categories. But if you stay on that platform, you simply go to like Prabhupada says, go to church, pray for, we pray for daily bread, like that. Then you're not going back to Godhead, because you're doing what they're doing here. They went to Brahma, who's kind of a god, to them, and then eventually they went to God himself to combat the demons, so we can get our kingdom back in the opulent system. It's all kind of on the lowest levels of devotional service. It's materially motivated. So this is some of the pitfalls of that. You find yourself fighting a demon or doing something against your guru. It's all started with that. Brihaspati was dishonored. Now he's actually killed his surrendered priest, and so he's in big trouble now. So, Tanmaya Buddha Abhajatam Bhakti Akayesham Gurudeva Tatma. This verse is by the Navayogendras, and there's so many wonderful verses in this section. They each have like a little lesson they give, maybe 8 or 10 verses. And this one has 4 or 5 memorable verses in it. So, Bhakti Gurudeva Tatma. One of the next ones is, which Prabhupada quotes all the time. How does it go? Bhakti padeshano bhavo viraktir anyatcha chaisa chika eka kala. Papadyamanasya tashantaktu tushti pushti chadapayo anugasam. I don't know if you're familiar with this verse. Very nice verse. Prabhupada would always quote the first line in one word. Bhakti padeshano bhavo viraktir anyatcha cha. So what that is saying, bhakti, there's 3 things happening. One is bhakti, pada isha anubhava, and virakti cha. And this is describing one who's fully surrendered and is practicing bhakti yoga. So the first thing is bhakti, means your love for Krishna is developing. And para isha anubhava, you get a direct experience of the Lord. He may reveal himself personally, or you're experiencing. And you become indifferent to everything else. The natural vairagya manifests, which we learned at the beginning of Bhagavatam. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Janayat Yashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayirahoitukam. And anyone who practices Krishna consciousness even a little bit seriously experiences that to some degree. Because really, when you're intelligent, you realize all these material desires that I have, and especially if it's some addiction, it could be drugs or gambling or anything like that, you can find this is causing me suffering. This is keeping me bound here, and it's causing so much pain. So when you become free of that, especially if it's some kind of addiction to a drug or something, this is how many devotees, they took shelter, of chanting Hare Krishna. They were able to free themselves from that. So that's one of the great benefits. And here he's saying that, okay, become free and you practice bhakti, and here's some of the benefits is that you become, your attraction for Krishna is growing and growing. And because of that, Krishna is revealing himself more and more. Para isha anubhava means a direct experience of God. You may experience not actually seeing God directly, but you're experiencing the happiness of Krishna consciousness. Where is that coming from? It's coming from Krishna. It means that he's happy with you because you're making good advancement. You're determined to give up the bad things and take on more of the good practices. So this theme is present throughout all our books, and that is that, okay, the first thing you should be aware of is that you'll never die and you're never born. That's the first lesson in the Gita, right? Nijayate mete bhakadacha. So what does that mean? What's the implication of that? It means that if you're just concerned with this one life, and you're not planning for the next life, then that's very cripple-minded. And you will, yeah, I'll try to maximize my happiness and pleasure in this lifetime. But in so doing, you're binding yourself more and more to this material world, which means suffering. Death, old age, disease, birth, all of these are very painful. We forgot birth, but we can see old age, disease, and death, and we experience them as time goes on. I think Krishna, gave me that job in the hospital for a year. Everything is there in the hospital concentrated. Birth, old age, disease, and death, right? and it's interesting because, it's kind of hidden away. It's there in the hospital, and people don't like to think of the hospital, that I have to go there someday. But that's just foolishness. Krishna consciousness, bring it out to the front of your consciousness. Yes, you're going to get old, you're going to get disease, it can happen at any time, and eventually you'll leave this body. So if all of your aspirations have to do with this identity in this body to try to make it pleased and comfortable, you're wasting the life, you're wasting human life. And all of that, karma that you're incurring, because in this present age nobody knows anything about, avoiding meat eating or anything, then you probably lose this human form of life for who knows how many years. And does anyone really want to come back here to this planet? And 100 years later or 50 years later, prolong the agony? It just, I'm more and more amazed at the miracle it's going to take to extend this Kali Yuga for another 427,000 years, isn't it? Does that seem likely? At the rate things are going, in the next 5 years, they're going to heat up the atmosphere. All these forest fires and everything, and the weather here has changed radically. I don't know if you heard. I think I mentioned. I don't know if in class. I have this app. I didn't know it had the feature. You can see what the weather was a year ago in the same place. So a year ago here, the high temperature was 80 degrees. Have we seen 80 degrees lately? It was one day where it almost reached 75. Yeah, it's spring already. It's still so cold, And Joseph, he has great faith in the Farmer's Almanac. This is and he said yes, and they predict that the summer will be very hot. They predicted this cold now, and maybe who knows what's going to happen. The point is, it's a tremendous risk to try to reconcile yourself to life in the material world. The only logical plan is to try to get out. Even in your own best interest, right? And because that's what everyone's motivated by. So, okay, here's your own best interest. Wouldn't you like to be free of fear and anxiety, and you extend that old age, disease, and death? Okay, you're going to go through it one more time, but wouldn't that be nice to be the last time? Yeah, that sounds good. That's why you get how 35 million people come to the Magh Mela, right, in the Kumbh Mela. Oh, let me get liberated. This is the easy route, right? I'll just, I'll pay my train ticket. Huh? 100 million now? When I first joined, the 35 million was what Prabhupada was. He lived there for 13 years. He saw 2 of those. So that's they're not all pure devotees. They're looking to be liberated and take the bath, right, at the time. But there's an interesting pastime. I remember reading. I think I read this in National Geographic. They did a special on one of those. On the front cover was some lady who had Ram, tattooed in. It was in Sanskrit. I didn't know what it meant at the time, because it was quite an event, But so the Babas come down from the Himalayas, and Prabhupada, because he went to 2 of those with the devotees, and he told them, don't look in the eyes, they're very powerful. They look like they're 35, but they could be 135 or 235. So just offer them all, deference and just walk. So there's different groups of them, and so when the precise auspicious time for the bath comes, it's always in the middle of winter, right? January sometime, freezing cold. then all those Babas want to get in there at the same time. There was an ongoing battle. There was a rumble. You know, they didn't have any guns, but they were, I don't know, they had mystic powers, whatever. So that's why the army was there. They had to break it up, right? You know. So what is that? Does that sound like a kirtan? It doesn't sound like, you know, because it's all, I want to be liberated. You guys get out of here, you know. Isn't it? It's from Prahlad. Prayena deva muniyo swava mukti kama. He said swava mukti kama, literally my own, lust for my own mukti. He said for the most part, these yogis, munis, prayena deva muniyo swava mukti kama, out of desire for their own liberation, maunam charanti vijane naparatanishta. They're silent. This is where the word muni comes from. Maunam. They're silent. They don't want to talk. Charanti, and they travel, they go to a place where there's no people. Vijane. Napararta nishta, because they don't care at all they're not at all determined to help others. Napara arta nishta, you see? But I'm not like that. And that's why I'm in anxiety, right? He starts out in the previous verse, Naivod Vijay. I have no anxiety. I'm not at all disturbed. He used the same word when his father first asked him, what's the best thing you learned today? This is a nice verse for the children to learn. It's Prahlad verse. He's your age. He's younger than you. And he knows the verse. Anyway. So, it says, now I'm forgetting the verse. See, this is karma. Joking with about it. You know the one. The first answer. What did you learn? What's the best thing you learned today? Tatsarumanye. Tatsarumanye asudavaya dehinam sadasam udvigna. Sadasam udvigna deyam asadgrahat. So he's describing the material condition in 2 lines. The best thing. But Prabhupada points out he didn't call him father. He called him the best of the demons. Asudavaya. Best for whom? For Dehinam, for the embodied souls, for all of us. Who are sada samudvigna, always disturbed. Why? That the consciousness, diyam, asadgrahat. Because they're holding on to something impermanent as shelter. I always give the example right here by the ocean. You know, as you go out on an ocean, on one of these vessels, and it springs a leak. Okay? So, okay, thank God we have these life preservers. So we jump in the life preserver, and we're floating, and of course we call 911 or something, they're coming. But the life preserver is leaking. This is called a sadgrahat. You're taking shelter of something that is doomed. You're taking shelter of the material body. So that causes great anxiety. So what's the solution? Hitvatmapatam grihamandakupam. Give up this andakupam of grihamedi life, grihamandakupam, which impedes or stops the progression of the soul. Hitva atma patam. Then what? Vanam gato. Go to the forest, and explain. It means Vrindavan. And Haramashihe, to take shelter of Hari. That's the last thing Hiranyakashipu wanted to hear. Hari was his arch enemy because he'd killed his brother, right? Hiranyaksha had already been killed by Varahadev. So that was the first instruction. So he used that same word to say, udviga means disturbed. Naiva udvijay. I'm not ever disturbed. Because you're on the other side of the Vaitarani river in spiritual world, and I'm with you because I'm always meditating on you. So I'm never disturbed. And at any time, I can sing your glorious, wonderful glories and immerse my mind in an ocean of nectar. But then he says, but I am lamenting. For what? For these fools, the mudas, who are trying to enjoy maya sukaya, the illusory flickering happiness, and bearing a great burden of material life in order to enjoy that little moments of flickering happiness. Maya sukaya bodham udvahato vimudhan. These fools. So I have to help them. Because the next verse he says, I don't see anyone but you who can help them. And so I'm not going to be like these selfish munis, so forth, going off to the Himalayas, leaving people behind, being lusty after my own kama, after my own mukti. Rather, Naitan vihaya kripanan vimamuksha eko nanyan tvarati shadanam brahmatonupashe. I don't see anyone but you who can help them, and I have to give them you. In other words, I have to preach. I have to stay here in the cities, you know. Probably these two verses are like the foundation of the whole mood of preaching of the Lord Chaitanya's movement. So that's really, you know, you can see the contrast between that and the attitude of Indra, you know, the demigods. The whole focus was, we got to get back our kingdom, and therefore we have to have to conquer these demons. And we're in great danger here now. We've created this, you know, our actions have created this great Vitrasura, and so we have to go to battle with him. And so, okay, we'll get to, you know, and so it's a horrific battle. At the end of the whole thing, they got their kingdom back, but Indra is now burdened with this sin of now killing two Brahmins, offending one, his village master, killing Trasta, and killing his brother, Vitrasura, both of whom were Brahmins. So it's quite a lesson here. And the main thing is not to get diverted, and trying to use bhakti to increase one's material situation, where it's meant to be just the opposite. What's the ideal? By the way, I don't know if anyone knows this, but just that I never knew it till recently, that Sanatana Goswami, I may have mentioned this already, Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami were younger than Lord Chaitanya by 1 or 2 years. I think Rupa by 2 and Sanatana by 1. I never knew that. You always think of them as senior ministers, you know, but they were in the government so young. You can see how intelligent they were and influential to be 21, 22 years old. And here's the finance minister, here's the prime minister. How qualified they were. So anyway, but they were the ideal. They and Raghunath Das Goswami were both extremely wealthy. Raghunath was like, you know, going to be the heir of $1 billion, you know, they were zamindars, you know, landowners, big landowners. And he already was, you know, his wife was like the goddess of fortune, you know, he had anything at his disposal. But he was completely enthralled with Lord Chaitanya. Got Lord Nityananda's mercy with the Shiddhadai festival, right, putting that on. Oh.
It's into class. I'm like,
well, thanks.
I'll bet up for it.
I was wondering why I couldn't remember my shlokas. No, I'm just kidding. So just see, you know, what is their standard, you know? So, you know, Lord Chaitanya is nadanang, nasundami. That's he gave us, you know. I'm not worshiping you for wealth, I'm not worshiping for followers, nothing material, you know. Just give me your service birth after birth. That's all I want, you know. So they were enthralled with Lord Chaitanya. And what they gave up, you know, it's like, I'm not going to name these guys, it's pollute the atmosphere, but you know, the famous billionaires we got, you know, who are around here. So suddenly said, yes, I want to, you know, move into the temple and give all my money to Radha Giridhari, you know. That would help. We could definitely build a second floor on this thing. Anyway, so that's what happened. And what is that verse? You know, beautiful verse. Chaktva turna mashesha mandala patishening sada tuchavat. Bhutva dina ganeshiko kadonaya kaupina kantashito. So the first two lines, you know, describe the renunciation. Immediately. In other words, they didn't say, well, let's consider this now. You know, this is a big sacrifice. Maybe we'll, you know, consult a lawyer or something. No. Tyaktva turnam. Immediately they gave up a shesha mandalapati, endless wealth and influence, you know, power and pelf, you know. Shening sada tuchavat. It's completely insignificant. You know, however many billions of dollars of, you know, boatloads of gold. I mean, so what did they do? For the sake of helping the dinas, the wretched of the earth, all of us, they're going to, you know, serve Lord Chaitanya mostly by writing books and excavating all the sites in Vrindavan to make that place a pilgrimage. So important mission they had. They took on coping and they took on rejected clothes, you know. From the wealthiest, they became as poor as you could possibly be. It's not that they set up shop under a tree in Vrindavan. No. Each night, different tree. They didn't even have their own tree. You know, they're going from place to place. But they were the wealthiest. Why? The third line. Gopi bhavada samatabda hari kallola magno moho. Again and again, they were diving into the most intense, blissful kind of bhakti, which is the bhakti, the ocean of nectar of the gopis' love for Krishna, the varieties that Lord Chaitanya taught. So that's the lesson. One of the lessons is that if you take the bhakti as is taught in the Bhagavatam and in our whole line, it means living as simply as possible, becoming a kinchana. I just heard Prabhupada giving talks on Queen Kunti's prayers. And she talks about that, a kinchana vrittaya, you are the property of the propertyless. And that means we don't even if you have a lot of wealth, just like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he had wealth, he had so many children, and he, responsible magistrate. But manasa deha geham jokish, whatever I have, beginning with my mind, my body, my family, my wealth, everything is yours, and I'll use it in your service, and to prove that it's yours. So that's really the mood of the followers of Lord Chaitanya. Yes, there were householders. Yes, there were those who were wealthy. Srila Prabhupada was so happy. I mean, I knew Ambarish back. I don't know if I told this story. I mean, our own Ambarish Das, And there was a period of time when he felt that devotees were coming to him, asking for money, and he was a little put out, and he withdrew a little bit from ISKCON. When I was in Miami. We went south a little bit, and we would visit him at his home. He had a very nice home. I don't think he may have built it, from scratch. But we did programs there. We bring prasadam and everything, and it was sweet. But he wasn't actively involved in ISKCON at that time. But gradually, I forget who helped him to come around. But he built. He built that first samadhi of Prabhupada's in Mayapur, which was, and I think he also helped the one in Vrindavan, And then, of course, this whole TVLP project, he's been central to not only giving the money but raising the money. I remember hearing him speak one time. This is back in 2005. It was my first and only trip to Chaupati, and that's what I wrote the Nityananda Ashtaka at that time, because the Nityananda's appearance day was coming up. I didn't write the Nityananda Ashtaka, but I wrote the poem, my little poem, poetic version. But then we went on to Mayapur, and let's see, what was it? I forget why I remembered that. But anyway, at that time I saw, I think it was, I hadn't been for quite a while, and I saw that wonderful samadhi that he built, and at that time there was the TOVP hadn't come up yet. That was a little later. And because there was all this different idea about what we're going to build as part of the city. You would probably remember that, right? There were different plans. Harikesh had a plan, this plans, So, but I think it was Ambarish who finally said, no, the plan is the one we should take Prabhupada's lead. Because Prabhupada had when he visited the capital, Washington, in 1976, which was the 200th anniversary of the revolution. It was a big deal. It was a lot of, and he saw that Capitol building, and he mentioned the outer bar, that, this should be our how the temple should be built, the big temple in Mayapur. And that was kind of lost, but then Ambarish found that out, and so he kind of pushed for that, and he helped to settle on that. And it does have kind of that form, the three domes like that, But anyway, he's been, such a wonderful devotee, and I didn't need any money, and I never asked him for any money, and so we were always great friends, because I visit Alatra, and I would see him, at all times, and so, yeah. And the other thing I wanted to mention that he had, this is what it was. There was a reprise, which means a repeat of the first Bombay Pandal. that Prabhupada did. You remember the one where Shyamachandra had a balloon at one time, advertising it, and it was a big deal. A lot of thousands of people came. It must have been maybe 70, early 70s. So they were doing it. Bhadanath Swami agreed, okay, we'll fund it, we'll have it, and they had it in the same place, and it was going on. And so I remember he spoke there, and he spoke about the need for those who have wealth to really give generously, and he had tremendous authority because he had done it, you see. So that was, he probably raised a lot more money than he gave, for this TLVP, because he could convince people, okay, you millionaires, to give, a couple $1 million, They have 100 million. Yeah, that makes sense if they're, Vaishnav, Anyway, that was, exactly what Prabhupada was hoping, that he would give his Lakshmi. Of course, famously bought the Detroit temple, mostly Lekashavanti also contributed. But it's still a kinchana. Even though you may have a lot of money, if you don't see it, you see it as Krishna's money and can be used for his service, should be used. I remember when, and this is the last story, and then oh my God, I've gone way over time. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so this is one more little account. So, some of you know the history. There was a case in the early 90s. ISKCON was sued because of, and there was some of it had to do with the Guru, later on the Gurukulis, because of what happened in the Gurukul. But so there was a lot of money that was owed, and we mortgaged this building next door, not this one, but everything had been paid off, but he had to mortgage this building, $300,000. And so we were paying every month, we were raising it, but it was a real burden on the temple. So it was a few years ago, I don't think you were here at the time, but it was around Christmas time, and there was an Indian gentleman who came, and he said, I'm going to pay off the mortgage, or pay a huge percentage of it. And he gave something like $70,000. By that time it was down to about 200,000, which was still a big burden. I don't know, you may remember the details more. But I remember him announcing, he says, I just can't stand to see, an ISKCON temple encumbered like that. So the fact that he gave all that money, then a lot of other members said, we should also give generously. And so within a couple of weeks, the whole thing was paid off, which was a huge relief. Because if we couldn't meet that payment every month, and they could possess that building and sell it off, can you imagine if this belonged to somebody else? So that's one of the ways in which wealthy people really can do so much service, by being generous and being credible for others to also give. Okay, I'm sorry, I went way over time. All right, we have a comment or question. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, thank you, Dharma Prabhu.
Haribol.
Just wanted to add that date. The Pandal program happened on 25th March 1971.
Oh, okay. You remember that? You were there?
Yeah, I got some message, that's when His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj, he was called by Prabhupada to sit next to him.
Oh, right.
It.
He saw him in the audience, and somehow he picked him
He saw
up.
him far behind, and he called him.
Yeah, you can see that. Yeah. Thank you.
And one more thing, you mentioned, Ambrish Prabhu was in Chowpatty, so he was trying to find a parking. So he was wandering for 1 hour. He couldn't find a parking because it's the most busiest part of Mumbai.
Yeah.
And then Maharaj went to him and said, what happened? He lowered the glass and he said, we all have to blame Henry Ford for this.
Because there were so many cars. I never heard that one before. Okay, sorry I went late. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.